They've got Air. They've got the Moon. Sorry. We don't have Dave Chappelle. MARS, Mars, bitches. Sorry, we don't have him in any of these schools.
This week, sponsored by Prips. Prips, the only fuel source that's going to get your bracket above all others. You're going to lose, but at least you're going to have fun doing it. Mike, you've done some investigating. You did some research. And we're going to base our next bracket solely based off of famous alumni. And why don't you take us through the famous alumni in a head-to-head matchup? Call it the Celebrity Deathmatch bracket. I'm pitching it over to you, Mike.
Dirk, trips and Freudian slips over here, baby. We're going big. And I've got a big theory for you on this one, Dirk. It is that this Celebrity Pick'em bracket is going to be far and away the most accurate bracket that we've picked out of all of our metrics. I have a feeling this one, as I have it playing out, and we're going to go matchup by matchup on this because it gets very interesting. I have a feeling, Dirk, this ends up being the most accurate bracket that we pick to real life. So let's dive in. Let's get weird. What's going on in celebrity world? Well, I'll tell you exactly what's going on, Dirk. We're going to first do a little bit of an eye test, and then we're going to have to report back to my eye doctor because these are not prescription sunglasses, and this bracket is really small. So in the East region, in our first round matchup, Dirk, we have UConn going up against Stetson. The problem for Stetson is I really couldn't find a whole lot of famous alumni, but UConn's got Meg Ryan going for it. We're bumping UConn. The next matchup, much more interesting, Dirk. Florida Atlantic claims Chris Carrabba, the dashboard confessional guy, but he is vindicated in this matchup because Northwestern is friggin' loaded. Cindy Crawford versus Chris Carrabba. Get out of here, you boy band guy. Northwestern moving on to the next round. Dirk, San Diego State versus UAB. We gave UAB a lot of love in the mascot challenge, but they're getting cooked in this one. Carl Weathers went to San Diego State. Easy pick right there. Moving it on. Dirk, here's a big matchup, though. Yale and Auburn. And let's just think about it, Dirk. Yale, you've got the Bushes. You've got Taft. You've got Hillary Clinton. All of the presidents, the presidential candidates, all of the prominence and prestige. But you don't have Charles Barkley. And so we're moving Auburn on into the next round. Auburn over Yale in this one. Dirk, BYU and Duquesne. BYU claims Ken Jennings out of Jeopardy fame. BYU moves it on in this one. However, they run into a tough matchup in the next round because they play the winner of Illinois and Morehead State. Morehead State has Phil Simms, who won a Super Bowl and then annoyed many people throughout TV with his color commentary. But Illinois, Dirk, claims Hugh Hefner. We're moving Illinois into the next round in this one. However, Washington State, a powerhouse with a claim to Dolph Lundgren, Dirk. Dolph Lundgren. We move Washington State on a big run in this one. Iowa State versus South Dakota State. And while Adam Vinatieri may have kicked 2 game-winning field goals in Super Bowls, he did not invent peanut butter like George Washington Carver did. I don't think George Washington Carver actually invented peanut butter. I think they just gave him that claim in 4th grade when we learned about it. But nevertheless, Iowa State moves on in this one in the East, Dirk. We go into the second round, UConn and Northwestern. And Dirk, there's just too much going on with Northwestern here. Zoe Deschanel, we're moving her on. Easy pick in that one. Northwestern moving on. San Diego State and Auburn. Charles Barkley, Bo Jackson. No, Auburn's moving on in this one too, Dirk. BYU and Illinois. Illinois is moving on with the Playboy Mansion situation. Washington State on the power of Dolph. All the way past Illinois into the Elite Eight. On the other round, Dirk, Auburn, Jimmy Buffett. But Northwestern has Pharrell. They have Stephen Colbert. But here's where they bump up. Jerry Springer went to law school there. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Elaine Bennis. Northwestern moving it on, Dirk, into the Final Four. Northwestern taking the East region. What are your thoughts on this one?
All right, listen up. Out of that side of the bracket, I'm just going to tell you right now that I think Northwestern is obviously a stacked and has to be favored to win. I mean, if you have the likes of Elaine Bennis, you have the likes of, who else? Was it Zoe Deschanel? Stephen Colbert. Now, hold on. We're going to claim Stephen Colbert back when he was with the Colbert Show, because he was much funnier back then. But we're gonna move on and just say that's a stacked lineup. I think they are my favorite so far out of what you've said.
So, Dirk, we hop over to the South region now. And Houston versus Longwood. Sorry about it, Longwood, but Houston's got Kenny Rogers. There's no way that you're taking Kenny Rogers out in that first round. But Nebraska versus Texas A&M. Now, as we know, Dirk, Texas A&M claims a lot of great football. Von Miller, Myles Garrett, Johnny Football. How could we possibly move Nebraska by them? I'll tell you how, Dirk. It's not just Warren Buffett. Nebraska has a secret weapon. Do you know who that is? Mean Gene Okerlund. Mean Gene coming out of Nebraska. They take out Texas A&M. Now, Dirk, Wisconsin claims Frank Lloyd Wright. Phenomenal architect. But do you know who went to James Madison, Dirk?
James Madison.
He may have helped found it, but no. Tony Schiavone went to James Madison. Tony Schiavone called WCW Nitro throughout our childhood. Continuing on, Dirk. Duke and Vermont, it's quite the showdown here. You've got Ben Affleck coming out of Vermont. But Duke, the lineup of basketball players is preposterous. They also claim Mike Posner, and the sweet sounds of Mike move Duke into the next round. Now, North Carolina State and Texas Tech, Dirk. Seems like it could be a bit of a bloodbath in that one with Patrick Mahomes leading the way for the Red Raiders. But the problem is Zach Galifianakis went to North Carolina State. The Wolfpack moves on in this one on the back of Zach. Kentucky and Oakland, Ashley Judd taking the Kentucky team into the next round. And then we go Florida and the Boise State, Colorado situation. Although Colorado does claim Matt Stone, Florida claims Bob Villa, in addition to all sorts of random athletes across the board. Tim Tebow leading the fame way. Florida into the next round. But Dirk, here is maybe the sleeper matchup of the entire tournament. In the first round, this is one of those triple overtime, all-time great showdowns. Marquette versus Western Kentucky. And it's no shocker that Western Kentucky's mascot is Big Red, the most horrifying blob on the planet, because John Carpenter, the man who did Halloween, went to Western Kentucky. And he's about ready to carve up the competition like Michael Myers, except he runs into Chris Farley out of Marquette. And there's just no way that we're taking Chris Farley off the board.
Now, Mike, if it was the guy that directed It or wrote It, or is it The Thing? No, it's The Thing. If it was the guy that wrote or directed The Thing, I'm going to take that side. Just because that's the most ridiculous horror film of all time. But yeah, absolutely. Chris Farley has to move on in that round.
Yeah, he's in a van down by the river right now, and that van is moving on. Dirk, we keep on walking it through. The Fighting Mean Genes of Nebraska go past Houston. James Madison and the Tony Schiavones are outdone by the Shane Battier Duke Blue Devils. Zach Galifianakis moves NC State into the Sweet 16. However, they fall to the likes of Chris Farley and Marquette. In our Elite Eight, Dirk, Mean Gene versus Chris Farley. What a showdown, but we've got to move Farley on the Final Four. Marquette standing in the Final Four out of the South region. Dirk, your thoughts?
Marquette is going to go into the Final Four kind of like Chris Farley and Black Sheep, where he goes, smoking, token, snorting, shooting.
Horse shit. Yes.
Yeah.
Marquette. We haven't even mentioned, the likes of like Dwayne Wade and some of those guys. We're just purely on the strength of Chris Farley here, Dirk. It gets very fascinating as we move on to the next region and we're going down to the West in this one, Dirk. In the absolute best matchup of the entire first round and one of the best of the whole tournament. North Carolina, Dirk, claims Michael Jordan. Let's be honest. North Carolina has Michael Jordan. How could you possibly challenge Michael Jordan? Well, Howard has Thurgood Marshall, Kamala Harris, Toni Morrison, and Chadwick Boseman. Unfortunately for them, Michael Jordan is not losing in the first round of this. North Carolina moving forward. It's a great showdown, but we move them on to the next round. Michigan State in this one, Dirk, moves forward. Although Mississippi State has Rafael Palmeiro shooting steroids, we're moving. Well, yeah, it's Michigan State is moving on the back of Magic Johnson in this one, Dirk. As great as Rafael Palmeiro's steroid situation was. Now, Dirk, the absolute most trash matchup in the first round of this is St. Mary's versus Grand Canyon. I think Grand Canyon was like an online university for a while there. We are moving St. Mary's by default in this one. Alabama, however, a bit of a powerhouse on the back of Broadway Joe Namath and many others. Alabama into the next round. Clemson also claims Dolph Lundgren, if you can believe that. Chemical engineering was both at Washington State and Clemson. However, in this scenario, New Mexico claims John Denver. And you know what? You're not taking down John Denver in the first round, Dirk. New Mexico moving on. Now, Baylor, RG3, some other, alumni. However, Colgate has Charles Adams, who did the Addams Family. And Gomez Adams is kicking RG3's ass in this one. We're moving Colgate into the next round, Dirk. Dayton versus Nevada. Dan Patrick versus Andre Agassi. We're going to move Nevada with Agassi. And Arizona, Dirk. You would think Arizona with Rob Gronkowski and Jimmy Kimmel, you'd think the sunshine down in the desert would be the easy pick, right? But something must be cooking. So watch out, NCAA tournament people, because Long Beach State is advancing in all of our brackets. And shockingly here, Steven Spielberg, Terrell Davis, and Misty May Trainer, Dirk. Long Beach State moving into the next round.
Let them cook.
Exactly. Let them cook. The next round, North Carolina over Michigan State. We're not even getting into the other alums yet, Dirk. It's Michael Jordan. St. Mary's doesn't even belong in this thing, so we're moving Alabama past them. New Mexico, a sleeper team here, Dirk. They also have Demi Lovato as one of their... And so, we're moving New Mexico on past Colgate. But, Dirk, Long Beach State, making that run, Steven Spielberg and Terrell Davis with legs all the way into the Elite Eight, Dirk. Unfortunately, as great as Spielberg is, Michael Jordan, and now we get into some of the others. James Polk, one of your more random presidents in U.S. history, Andy Griffith, Stuart Scott, and Mia Hamm. Mia Hamm, Dirk. North Carolina into the Final Four out of the West. Your thoughts?
The fact that Long Beach State isn't in the Final Four out of this, you're just flat wrong. And I'm just going to say, you stopped the cooking too early. You took it straight out of the crock pot. It was a slow simmer, all right? It wasn't this Instapot stuff that you trendy millennials like, all right? It was in the crock pot. You took it out early. You didn't let them cook. That's all I got to say.
Third, Michael Jordan. That's all we have to say. Michael Jackson exists, and he's still not known as MJ. But I think if you like wackiness, Dirk, you're going to like our final region out in the Midwest. Here's what we got cooking up. The number 1 seed, Purdue Boilermakers. Now, Grambling does claim Erica Badu, which is a great claim to fame. But Purdue has Neil Armstrong, Dirk. He went to the moon. Purdue is moving on and looks very formidable in this one. We're not even getting into what else they've got going on. Dirk, Utah State and TCU, not a great matchup. Utah State, we've got like Jordan Love. Kind of weak when that's what I'm pulling up here. TCU, at least, we got LaDainian Tomlinson carrying them into the next round. Gonzaga, Dirk, a bunch of basketball alumni here. John Stockton, but we're talking NCAA tournament, so crying Adam Morrison is going to be pretty hard to beat. We're moving Adam Morrison rolling around on the court, balling into the next round. Kansas versus Samford. And Dirk, Samford actually has Bobby Bowden as an alumni, which is a great one. Unfortunately, Kansas has Wilt Chamberlain, and the Big Dipper is the biggest of them all. We're moving them on into the next round. Dirk, South Carolina, powerhouse here, going up against Oregon. And while we do hear all about Phil Knight and Nike, Oregon also has Caitlin Olsen, that is Dee Reynolds from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. However, South Carolina has Joe Frazier and Aziz Ansari. Easy to move South Carolina into the second round here, Dirk. Creighton, Bob Gibson, and also everyone's favorite 1-6 insurrectionist, Paul Gosar. We're going to move Creighton into the next round. However, they are quick to fall, I believe, to South Carolina in that situation. Dirk, the powerhouse schools, though, at the bottom of the bracket there. Texas, I mean, where do we even start with this? We knew that Texas was going to be a challenge for everyone. It gets more crazy as you look at the alumni list. Farrah Fawcett, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Kevin Durant. It's getting ridiculous here. And it's also pretty ridiculous over at Tennessee, Dirk. Not only do you have Peyton Manning, but you've got Dolly Parton putting them into the next round too. Now, as we get into the second round matchups, easy to push Purdue past TCU. We're still on Neil Armstrong here, Dirk. Armstronging his way. Kansas, the Big Dipper, Wilt Chamberlain into the Sweet 16. South Carolina, smoking Joe Frazier, taking him in. Texas and Tennessee is tough, Dirk, but what can you say? McConaughey, Owen Wilson, Rip Torn, Kevin Durant. Texas moving into the Elite Eight. But here's where it gets shocking, Dirk. The shocker of the entire tournament. Purdue versus Texas. And Purdue, out of the woodwork, pulls Orville Redenbacher, the popcorn guy. Not to mention Drew Brees and John Wooden, maybe the greatest basketball coach of all time. Purdue upsetting Texas and going to the Final Four in this one, Dirk. Your thoughts?
Look, I get it. You got an astronaut coming out of Purdue, right? However, Matthew McConaughey played a much better astronaut in Interstellar. That's got to account for something. And Orville Redenbacher's popcorn is mid at best. So I'm a little more partial to the Texans Longhorns. I think they got hooked in this one. Hook 'em horns, they should have been in the Final Four.
Boiler up. 4 matchup, Dirk. Northwestern and North Carolina in a showdown. And this one is painful for you. But as much as I would love to put Elaine Bennis into the national championship, the Michael Jordan shot, Dirk. Just imagine Elaine getting dunked on from the free throw line while MJ has his tongue out, just wagging it. North Carolina into the national championship of this one, Dirk. And in Purdue versus Marquette, Chris Farley, you had a great run, but Neil Armstrong went to the freaking moon. That's just tough to beat. And in your national championship, Dirk, As much as I want to crown James Polk not only president but king, we're going with the Purdue Boilermakers. One small step for man, one giant step for college basketball. Purdue comes out on top in the celebrities. We didn't even mention Kyle Orton, Dirk. Remember Neckbeard?
Yes, I remember Neckbeard. But also, you forgot the likes of Amelia Earhart, who also graduated from Purdue.
Also, yes, Amelia Earhart. I knew there was someone else out there. Dirk, it's just hard to go against the Boilermakers in this one. They've got air, they've got the mood. Sorry. We don't have Dave Chappelle, MARS, Mars, bitches. Sorry, we don't have him in any of these schools.
Now look, I'm just going to put it out here. There's a lot of snubs this year, including Indiana State, right? But one of the biggest snubs out of the celebrity bracket that we're talking about right now is if UCLA would have made it, at least we could have talked about Tanya Harding and how she would have carried alone any celebrity death match all the way to the Final Four.
Oh, I think she would have been pretty tough, Dirk. But I think I do have a contender that would have been almost impossible to beat, and that's the University of Michigan. And a cold-blooded killer. We're not talking about Tom Brady, Dirk. We're talking about Ted Bundy. Would have been pretty difficult. And on that note,